speaker. Two astronauts are stuck in space right now. It all started when they hear this creepy buzzing sound coming from inside the spacecraft. A noise that shouldn't even be possible in the vacuum of space. The situation got so strange that the return trip from the International Space Station was cancelled. What was supposed to be just a few days in space has turned to a 9 months of a real nightmare. This situation is happening to NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and his colleague Sunita Williams. On June 5th, 2024, they left Earth with one mission to spend about 24 hours traveling aboard the Boeing Starliner spacecraft until they reached the space station. They were supposed to stay there for only 8 days, working alongside the 7 astronauts and a cosmonaut already aboard. After that, their head back to Earth on the Starliner was simple as that. However, they are getting ready to return to Earth. Something strange happened. Wilmore started hearing this bizarre noise inside the Starliner capsule. It sounded like a heartbeat with steady intervals. The creepiest part is that space is supposed to be totally silent. Since there is no medium for sound to travel through, there are no atoms or molecules to carry a sound wave. So there is no sound or echo, and no one can hear you scream. It is just totally silence. So there is no way those weird sounds could be coming from outside the spaceship. The situation got pretty concerning as the noise just wouldn't stop. On top of that, the astronauts couldn't figure it out where it was coming from. They knew it. It was coming from a speaker inside the capsule. But they had no clue what was causing it, so they decided to ask the experts at the Johnson Space Center in Houston for help. Before we continue, it's important to know that odd sounds in spaceships are not uncommon. Back in 1969, when the Apollo Mission 10 entered the lunar orbit, astronauts said that they hear a piece of mysterious music coming from the far side of the moon. It was like a whistling sound that lasted almost an hour. It was so strange that they thought no one would believe them. Specialists think the sound was cast by radio interference, maybe from a magnetic field or atmosphere. But here is the thing, the moon has no magnetic field or not enough atmosphere to cast this sound, so the mystery still stands. Something similar happened back in 2003. Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei was on his first trip to space alone aboard a tiny spacecraft. When he started hearing something weird, it sounded like someone knocking on the spaceship's body, almost like knocking on a iron bucket with a wooden armor. But what was even stranger was that the sound didn't seem to come from either outside or inside the spacecraft. Leeway never figured out what it was, not even after returning to Earth. The situation was eerie enough to freak him out. Probably just like what happened to Wilmore and Williams, but in the case of the NASA astronauts, it looks like they found the answer to the creepy sound. According to the team at the mission control of the sound, was probably just a technical issue. They think it's a speaker feedback loop between the space station and the Starliner. So that sounds like a great news, right? Well, not exactly. The problems were far from over. The audio issue was definitely a concern for the team at the Johnson Space Station, but honestly, there were a lot of other technical issues going on with the spaceship even before the launch. Experts noticed a small but persistent helium leak. This could be a big problem because this gas powers the thrusters which control the spacecraft's orientation, speed, and trajectory. But the specialist thought, nah, it'll be fine. The leak was at the acceptable level and posed a little risk to the mission's success, so they decided to go ahead with the launch. But then things just got worse. Once the astronauts were in, space specialists noticed another helium leak, then another and another. In the end, they found 5 leaks, which had the mission managers pretty worried, so they urgently contacted Wilmore and Williams. The astronauts were about to go to sleep when they got the order to shut down 2 valves on the spacecraft so that way it would be safe again. and still have lots of helium left to get them home. And when they threw it was all over, turns out it was not the Starliner also had issues with the thruster control system. The capsule had 28 small thrusters and 5 of them had technical problems. At some point during the trip, 4 of the thrusters were fixed pretty quickly, but one of them never worked again. So first there were the helium leaks, then the thrusters was not working properly, and now there is this weird buzzing sound coming from inside the spacecraft. It seems like the problems with the Starliner just kept piling up. Suddenly it became the way too risky to bring the astronauts home. That's why NASA decided to cancel their return trip. Actually, they delayed it, extending the 8-day stay on the space station to 9 months. So far, they're expected to come back to Earth in March 2035, but it's hard to say for sure since this date has already been pushed back before. But what we know for sure is that both astronauts are stuck in space right now, waiting for the NASA and SpaceX is Dragon spacecraft to bring them back to Earth. Until then, they are sharing their floating home, which is about the size of 6-bedroom house with 7 other people being stuck in a orbiting laboratory and unable to get home. Is definitely a suffocating situation for most of us, but it looks like they are handling it pretty well. Both of them had already done 2 long duration stays in orbit before, so despite their families, both astronauts are used to it. And they said they are grateful for the extra time in space before the mission began. NASA also made sure they understood all the risks of the flight, including the chance they might have to stay at the station longer than planned. That's why both Wilmore and Williams fully supported the new date. Father returned to Earth and they have been keeping their mind pretty busy, but they are doing a lot of scientific work. One thing they are really focused on is looking after the plant facility at the space station. The team is testing different techniques to see how they could help grow outside Earth, figuring out how plants grow in space and making sure they get the right amount of water and nutrition is really important, especially as space travels keep going further and further beyond the moon. A lot of people are concerned about the safety and health. But for now, there's no need to worry, they are completely fine. Stays on the space station usually lasted about 6 months or more. Also, the place is well stocked with everything the crew needs, including food, water, clothes, and oxygen. NASA and its partners often send missions with extra supplies to make sure everyone feels safe and take care. If Wilmore and Williams feel homesick and have some free time, they can always email, call, or video chat with their families and friends. The Boeing Starliner spacecraft returned to Earth on September 2024, but it came back empty without Wilmore and Williams on board. Traveled in autonomous mode after undocking from the space station, the Starliner re-entered Earth's atmosphere after 6 hours of travel using parachutes to slow its descent before landing at the White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. The landing was a success, but NASA specialists wish it could have gone as originally planned. I mean, with Williams and Wilmore on board. So, what happens next? After months of waiting, astronaut Cynthia Williams is making her long-awaited return to Earth, and the whole world is watching. How did she and her fellow astronauts make their way back? You wouldn't believe what was happened next. At 11:05 p.m. ET, the countdown clock hit zero, and the hatch of the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft was sealed. This was the moment Sunita Williams and her crew were about to begin the journey home. But before the final blast off, the crew had just 40 minutes to complete a series of final checks. And trust me, this checks was not just a formality, there was a lifeline for astronauts. With everything in place, The astronauts slipped into the flight chute, strapped into the seats, and completed a series of intense leak checks to ensure the spacecraft was ready to depart. This was not just a test run, it was the lifeline for the journey back to Earth. And then, precisely the scheduled time, the Crew Dragon spacecraft undocked from the International Space Station. It was an emotional moment not just for the crew but for everyone watching. The spacecraft left behind the incredible engineering marvel that is the ISS, and the astronauts were headed to home. Meanwhile, NASA stopped the live video that didn't leave fans hanging, that kept the audio coverage going, allowing us to hear every single moment as Sunita and her crew communicated with mission control. It was like being right there with them every step of the way. Fast forward to 5:57 p.m. ET, the splashdown. After entering the intense re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, the Crew Dragon capsule was finally headed towards the Gulf Coast of Florida, where it would make its dramatic splashdown. This was the moment everyone has been waiting for, but it's not over yet. The capsule hit the water, and within moments, recovery teams were racing to retrieve it. You should feel the tension as they rushed to assist the astronauts out of the capsule and onto a waiting recovery ship, but there was still one more chapter to this incredible journey. After being carefully helped onto the ship, Sunita Williams and the crew were flown to Houston, Texas, and greeted with heroes welcome at NASA's Johnson Space Center. But before that, the final video coverage of the landing started at 4:45 p.m. ET, and it was just as intense as he expected. It was a joyous reunion for the astronaut with their families, friends, and the NASA team, making the successful return of a mission that will be remembered for years. Now they are back. There is one question that still remains. What was that eerie puzzling sound? NASA demanded it was just a speaker glitch, but was it? Why have so many astronauts across different missions reported strange sounds in space? Apollo 10, the whistling music, Young Levy, the mysterious knocking, Starliner 2024, the heartbeat sound. Could it be something beyond what we understand? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, just subscribe, like, share. Bye everyone.